notes that I had on self-love is exactly hitting home what you guys are saying. I'm a really big advocate on the 5 love languages, because it's like if a person who's speaking French is trying to speak to a person who's speaking English, there's just a disconnect and then there's frustration. And, a lot of good fruits can't come out of that if you're not understanding what language that person is trying to speak. But I mean, the number one thing I had written down is that you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to make sure that you're full so you can pour into others' lives. I think we're really focused on being like relational and giving yourself and all that you can do. And I found myself in college. I went to ECU with Jewel, and we are pulled in so many different directions. Even if you're not in school, if you're just working or whatever you might be into, you pull yourself in so many directions and you forget that maybe the outcome of your work isn't at the level you want it to be because you haven't taken that time for yourself. And we're so focused on pouring into others that we don't pour into ourselves. And I just think, sometimes we have to recenter and put ourselves first, because it's just so important. And then another point I had written down that I've lived by is comparison is the thief of joy. I had to learn that. And I think in this day and age, we see, social media, whoever we're around, it's just hard that we're always comparing ourselves. And that is the thief of joy. And you can't, sit and just constantly compare yourself. You have to give yourself that self-love. And like how we've been saying, journaling, podcasts, speaking to a friend or a therapist, just kind of even just speaking to yourself what you're good at and how you're proud of yourself and what your love language is. I think that's so important, because comparison is a really hard thing to not fall into nowadays. So I think, like how Jill was saying, taking time to yourself. Sometimes I'll just have my phone on D&D, or I just won't be on Twitter or Instagram. Sometimes I'll take a step back so I don't fall into that trap, because it's very hard with today's day and age, not comparing yourself. I think that's a big deal.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think that, to comment on what you shared, Charlotte,
but I think finding those boundaries is kind of just a trial and error. Like when something is done that makes you uncomfortable, or when you notice that, hey, I'm turning into this negative, toxic person, and you kind of have to backtrack and see, okay, well, where did I allow myself and this other person to cross the line? And kind of just trial and error, because off the bat, I think it's hard to know what exactly your boundaries are, because you have to know what they are before you set them. And I think as young people, it is hard to kind of just set it off gate. So I think that comes from just experiences with relationships and friendships, just figuring out what your triggers are, because everybody's are different. Everybody's boundaries are different.